I feel like there's been sales of virtual houses already on the metaverse.
No, there has. There was a yacht sold for multi-million dollars, a fake yacht.
And Nike bought a company to create online.
But that fake yacht is just as real as anything else to that person that bought it.
Bro, so that's my point. So with crypto, if you really think about it, that fake Bitcoin that doesn't exist is literally as real, if not more valuable based off the technology supporting it than the US dollar, than any sort of fiat currency, than even gold, and some would argue actual real estate, but I wouldn't go that far. Dude, if gold was as valuable as people like Peter Schiff are making it out to be, how come gold miners aren't buying the gold that they're mining? I think Elon Musk, I can't remember who said it, I think it was Elon Musk, said money is a tool for resource allocation. So, I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, right?
I would say money itself is a resource.
But okay, so fiat currency is a resource? Right, so that's what I'm saying. I think from the definition of where money, like why we had the paper, I mean, even gold, right? Like gold only has the value that we put in on it, but as a precious metal and what it actually provides value in terms of like that shit that went up into space, the new fucking Hubble Space Telescope, the James Webb Telescope, it's like got a lined sheet that's like 100 yards long or some shit of just thin ass gold because it's the only, or it's the best, not only, it's the best material for refracting sunlight. I think that's what it's used for.
But yeah, it's the context in which you use it for sure.
Right. So if we look at money as a means for allocating resources through an intermediary or through a tool like fiat currency or like gold or property, right? If you look, this is where I'm starting to really, the more due diligence I do, the more I start actually realizing the base first principle shit that I thought I understood on cryptocurrency, but like Bitcoin in particular. If you look at Bitcoin, no different than you look at a fiat currency, no different than if you look at a property, no different than if you look at gold, you realize not only the utilization ability of it, no different than any other asset, but you realize the actual worthiness of it based off the technology supporting it. So, you guys know Peter Schiff, right? You know Peter Schiff, right?
I don't.
Mr. Gold.
Mr. Gold, right.
Mr. Crypto's bad, gold all the way.
Peter Schiff talks about crypto is the worst shit on earth.
Caveat, Peter Schiff, his son is like a full crypto guru while he's like a gold guru.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So his son is all into good.
But he's probably got all the context of what his dad knows.
Right.
Oh yeah, all day. So his son, he'll tweet his son like, crypto's doing bad. Do you see it going down? And then he'll be like, oh, crypto's doing good up. And he'll be like, do you see dad now? But they'll go back and forth.
Peter Schiff he's preaching all this shit on gold. Do you need a water, by the way?
I got one.
Okay. Peter Schiff talking all this shit about gold, yet I think he only has like 2% of his portfolio in gold. But then you have people like Michael Saylor, who is he's such an advocate and such a personifies so much on what he preaches, and is such an advocate for cryptocurrency, but Bitcoin in particular, that he has over 50% of his portfolio in crypto, in Bitcoin in particular. Not saying that's good or bad, but let's talk about are either of you familiar with legit how crypto even works?
No,
not entirely familiar.
Yeah, I haven't really delved into crypto.
I do have a question. Okay. If crypto or Bitcoin, let's say, is tied to like Bitcoin for now is evaluated, let's say $40,000 US, right?
Right.
And that can be used for any country across the world.
Right.
If the dollar collapses, what happens?
That's the problem. If the dollar collapses, then we're fucked. That's the problem. If the dollar collapses, we're fucked.
That's what I'm saying.
Is that safe to say? Do you not think so?
I mean,
what happens if the dollar? I know you have.
I think the logistics though of what that means, because some people they think in a financial crisis, like, what is your risk tolerance? Just with or without a financial crisis, what is your risk tolerance? Some people are on the high spectrum, some people are on the low. Some people think that they could maintain a certain level of same type of investing behavior no matter what, because they feel the market's always going to go up. But like, what's the logistics of if the market were to tank like 30%?
Right.
It's like, no, not some people think everything's just going to be the exact same yet the market has just tanked 30%. But no, it's likely caused by something that's like catastrophic, like a global pandemic or something like that.
Literally.
Like all these different things change. It's going to change how you view investing. Like if you see your portfolio tank like that and you see all this stuff happening, all this stuff is new, all this stuff is unknown, then it can potentially change how you view and how you behave from then on out. So yeah, if the US dollar were to tank like that to where people start panicking, someone that was super like stoic with regard to risk may all of a sudden also jump on that panic train.
Right. So what happens if the US dollar, what does it even mean for the US dollar to collapse? What does that even mean?
I don't even know.
You guys don't know?
No.
I would say that would mean that like certain commodities and goods are above the average median wage of income.
So all it means, Justin, is it goes from $1 to 50 cents to 25 cents and then to 1 cent. So there's no threshold for where it actually collapses.
Yeah, I was gonna
It's
say.
collapsing is a progressive succession of its
purchasing value.
Of its purchasing power, right? I was going to say the depreciation of the currency, but is that contextually right, using that word like that, or no?
Well, I mean, it is depreciating and
Right.
the purchasing power is diminishing.
Right.
It's
Okay.
like one and the same.
Right. This is where my dilettantishness in finances really reveals itself.
Okay.
But if the US dollar were to collapse, then that would affect like the global
Globe,
economy.
yeah,
So
literally.
like, I don't even know what that means.
But other currencies have already collapsed based on us printing out so much money because we are the reserve currency.
Like Venezuela.
And Argentina.
So think of it like this, Justin. If the dollar...
So it's like,
go ahead.
$1 is like 1 Argentina peso. And then over time, with us printing out more money and increasing inflation, $1 is now 5 pesos. And then $1 becomes 10 pesos. And then $1 becomes 200 pesos.
And now I think it's literally at 240 pesos,
Yeah.
Argentinian peso. Dude, if gold was as valuable as people like Peter Schiff are making it out to be, how come gold miners aren't buying the gold that they're mining?
Because they would rather have the flexibility of the money.
Of the US dollar, right? Of something that is more portable, that is less likely to be seized, that isn't, what is it? Go ahead, were you gonna say something?
I was going to say, or maybe that they know that guaranteed if any currency collapses, even the dollar, that they're okay because they work in a gold mine, so they can either way get gold. So they have access
Yeah.
to
But I'm saying
gold.
gold is as
Yeah.
valuable as people make it out to be, especially as being something you need to heavily invest your portfolio in.
Right.
How come the gold miners aren't even investing in their own
Because they
gold?
can't pay their rent with gold,
Right. So what can they pay their rent with?
with money,
But what money?
dollars,
Yeah.
What dollar?
US.
So that's the point. So we pay everything with the US dollar because that's what people have valued. I mean, realistically, because we've won every war in the 20th century, right? That's really why. And because we've gone in and done that shit to Gaddafi and shit. Now we're preaching, right? So it's the US dollar. So what happens if we put sanctions on Russia? Do you know what happened? Do you know what's going on with Russia's economy just since the Ukrainian stuff?
What?
Russia's economy has dropped 35%.
The
So-
rubles crashed. The bank went off SWIFT. Yeah, they can't
35%.
communicate international transactions with each other.
So imagine if there was something that you could, especially if you foresaw an invasion coming into your country or something, imagine if there was some place that you could literally put all that money into an asset that is like gold, but is more portable and has way more substantiated value based off the technology
I
supporting
just think that crypto is so new relatively that a lot of people just can't, it's hard for them to feel that strongly about it because it's so new. And it's like,
But do you even okay. Do you see any value in Bitcoin?
I mean, clearly, yeah, the crypto market has valued the Bitcoin and it's,
How about this? Take that and then let me say it like this. If you could have a US dollar right now, the equivalent of a US dollar in Bitcoin right now, or the equivalent of a gold bar in a dollar right now, which one would you choose?
probably just the dollar.
Right. Why?
Because I know the things that I can purchase with this dollar in the near future are pretty much going to be that same value with the power that I can purchase with this dollar
What about-
versus Bitcoin, which has been super volatile.
Right.
US dollars aren't that volatile.
100%. Volatility is a whole nother conversation to be had. That's a whole nother conversation to be had and a justified one. But keeping it just basic, first principle stuff.
first principle stuff, but you're talking about crypto. That doesn't.
No, I'm talking about crypto as an asset, no different than the US dollar. That's first principles, right? Okay, so, but in thinking of it no different than the US dollar, thinking it no different than a gold bar, how about this? Have you ever even thought of it like that?
I haven't.
Have you ever thought of it as a vehicle asset no different than a stock?
Yes, I have.
Okay, because you've traded with
I
it
haven't
before.
thought about crypto as an actual currency, more so than looking at it as like a different stock, I guess.
And because of how new it is and everything else you're kind of talking about, and the volatility and everything else. So, do you understand do you even know about do you know what blockchain is?
See, no, I haven't done.
So, and this is why I like to think of it from a first principle standpoint, because if you can understand the first principles, you can nearly default to the geniuses who are applying the first principles in complex fashion, in complex order. I'm not saying blindly trust a Michael Saylor because he bought $500 million in Bitcoin. I'm not saying do that. But I'm saying the fact that he has the nutsack to do that and he's a successful business mogul, there may be some value to it. And the genius behind someone like him is he even says, I'm not telling people to buy crypto. I'm telling them to do their own due diligence, to develop the conviction, to make their own opinion and their own decision on something. That's when someone says something like that and they're not trying to sell nothing, that to me is like, okay, there's some truth and integrity behind the words that you're preaching and behind the ideas you're preaching. Then we get into the actual implication of crypto as a fundamental concept, which is the integrity and truth aspect of it. The technology underlying crypto, Bitcoin in particular, because I think that's where the technology was first discovered from or was first applied through, was through crypto, or it was through Bitcoin, because on the dark web, they don't want people tracing their money. And if they don't want people tracing their money, they'd use a technology that they had to use a technology, or they didn't want people to be able to trace the US dollar. So they created an alternate currency online that allowed them to know exactly where their money went in case it went bye-bye on the dark web. So what they did is they created a technology, blockchain, which gives you each pinpoint of where that technology has gone, essentially.
Like for tracking your package.
Like tracking your package from the time it was created and mined. So when it's mined, the minute it gets transferred anywhere, when it's key codes or however it's the actual implication of how it's created and then transferred, the portability aspect of it, which is instantaneous compared to a gold or compared to a US dollar even, unless it's online. And then you can talk about, okay, now since they're both online, which one's going to be less volatile?
Yeah, I mean, money is super digital now, especially with credit cards. And if you go to get a loan, they don't just give you $30,000 in cash. No. You just add a bunch of zeros to your account on your phone, on your app. And you're like, oh, now I have $30,000.
So imagine if that $30,000 wasn't backed by some piece of paper in the world, though. And I think that's the point, is what's going to be the next US dollar if it collapses?
But what if all the dollars end up not being physical anymore and they are digital?
Right. Then it'll be the US.
Will it be the same thing as the US dollar cryptocurrency?
It's at that point, they're going to have to still print money, right? So at that point, there's still an unlimited cap or an unlimited ceiling, a no-capped ceiling on the non-scarce asset of the US dollar, even if it's digital. Which, again, will just keep going forever and ever and ever and ever.
And it provides for influx or influence of corruption when you allow institutions to take over currency.
And so the decentralized aspect of crypto in and of itself is enough for me, with the little knowledge I know in finance, to say that has some real world implications that can change the game. That just by me not having to, this is why they're starting to regulate it and shit, by me not having to
be subjected to government or tyrannical rule. That's what they
do. So that's where it's all about risk. When it comes to your wealth, it's all about risk. If you don't do anything, what are you risking?
That's a lot of risk.
Right, because you're risking against what? Inflation.
Everything is risk.
Well, okay, but I'm saying what specifically?
Oh, yeah, specifically, yeah. You mean your inflation. The lack of gains you're not going to be getting, you know what I'm saying?
Genius, right.
So,
and that's the sort of genius input I'm talking about, because I can't even think about that extra on top.
Yeah,
that's
it's
genius.
Like inflation for sure. Right. And then also the opportunity cost of where you could have been utilizing that money or investing that money.
Right. Whether it's in a stock, whether it's in gold, whether it's in a property. So I think when you, bro, spending 3 years legit in isolation put a level of actually valuing things for what they are. I look at a $50 bill as literally a piece of paper, right? Though I understand the inherent value in that $50 bill, especially now, in 10 years, it might be worth $25, right? Depending on what inflation's at. But that $50 bill right now is like, I understand what the value of this is. I understand the value of this laptop. I understand the value of these cameras. But there's a legit, like a, what the f can that piece of paper actually do for you? What did it do? What did the Wehrmark, what was it? The German paper in the 19...
The mark, I think German mark. Yeah.
The German mark, right? The Wehrmark, I think is what it was actually called though, right? Like it was, because Wehr, I think is just the and then the mark, so Wehrmark, right? Right. What did they do? They were burning their money
to keep warm.
So imagine if the US dollar were to get to that, which I don't think it ever will.
It's the context though. It's like they had to do it right then and there to stay alive.
Right. But that rise, that tremendous rise of inflation led to the rise of Senor Adolfo. So I would say that if the dollar collapsed here, it could lead to a major civil war or centralization of the world, like a United Nations type stuff.
Okay.
Or I'm saying there could be multiple things about, or people purge style, like anarchy.
Okay, what do you think is going to happen in the next 20 years? Like based off of the COVID shit, do you guys think anything's going to really change in the next 20 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still going to be safe.
Yeah.
So,
safe.
So that's my point. So
secure.
If we're going to be safe, we have to then think, okay, we're not going to go to war. We're going to be safe for the most part. Because if we go to war, nukes are getting dropped and we're all effed.
Nothing matters.
I don't think that's my point, right? Like, so if we're operating off the presupposition that everything's going to be relatively okay, kind of like how it is now, though there is always going to be suffering and problems in the world, what is the best way to... Do you think buying property is the best way to fight against, like...
I think the best way is to have your toes dipped in multiple buckets.
Diversified portfolio, for sure.
I think real estate is a strong one. I think that there's proof of concept in investing in real estate.
Right.
People have been doing it for decades. I think everyone's always going to need a place to live.
Right.
So I think it's very strong.
Go ahead.
Would you say a better investment instead of real estate would be the land itself? Because then you can always have real estate developers lease it or whatever, but the land itself is always...
I consider it to be one and the same.
A condo is not the same as the land, though.
Yeah, like the land on the condo compared to like all the condos on it. Someone may own that complex, but they got to pay the person who owns that land every month. No matter.
Yeah, or they could just buy the land and build on top of it.
So
or you could own condos within the building, but you got to pay the building.
Like the condo, let's say the person who owns like the complex, the condo, he can't pay the owner of the
landlord,
right? Literally the landlord, right? So
Right.
now the landlord can be like, all right, I own your condo, your complex. That's what I'm talking about. That's the real power. The ones who owns the dirt.
But who owns the dirt?
Like McDonald's, like you can franchise McDonald's, but they own the dirt.
Yeah, correct.
So even
every
if you as a
franchise owner
franchisee
is leasing.
Yeah, so
Nobody,
even if you as a franchisee fail,
McDonald's,
the corporation owns that McDonald's now.
Yeah.
So, or if you don't meet their requirements.
I mean, I guess if you look at it with respect to the maintenance, if you just own the land, you don't really have to maintain anything. They're going to develop themselves. They're going to do all that stuff. So, I mean, to a certain extent, if you were able to have that opportunity just to buy the land, and given that someone is going to develop on it, then yeah, that's a pretty good situation.
Okay, so let me ask you this, because again, now you're talking about maintenance. If you were to look at cryptocurrency, but specific stable coins like Bitcoin, as a virtual property, let's say it's virtual real estate, what's the maintenance on that?
Nothing.
Right. There's nothing really. I mean, if anything,
there literally is going to be virtual property on like the metaverse and stuff like
right.
that.
But
the only thing you'd have to do is worry about upkeep on electrical grids.
I feel like there's been sales of virtual houses already on the metaverse.
No, there has. There was a yacht sold for multi-million dollars, a fake yacht.
And Nike bought a company to create online.
But that fake yacht is just as real as anything else to that person that bought it.
Bro, so that's my point. So with crypto, if you really think about it, that fake Bitcoin that doesn't exist is literally as real, if not more valuable based off the technology supporting it than the US dollar, than any sort of fiat currency, than even gold. And some would argue actual real estate, but I wouldn't go that far.
Would you say that Bitcoin is the dollar for the digital universe? So then, like, you have the dollar for the physical.
I think it's the gold. I think in the words of Michael Saylor, it's gold perfected. And because it's gold perfected in the sense the maintenance is low, the portability aspect of it, the security aspect of it, because this is the integrity, Justin, that I was talking on, and the truth aspect of it that I was talking on, the technology in and of itself. If I were to create a fake Bitcoin, or if I were to steal somebody's Bitcoin, the technology based off how the blockchain works, based off how the blockchain technology works, this is what Jamal was kind of alluding to earlier. It can identify and recognize through constantly checking on itself what's a fraud and what's out of order.
Has there ever been instances of corruption?
I believe it's an uncorruptible software system because as soon as something is off, it kicks it off the network. It's like, get the fuck out of here. Because it understands what actually constitutes a actual gold bar, let's say, or an actual Bitcoin. But again, I'm talking so out of pocket at this point that I don't want people to start investing in crypto blindly.
So if someone were to approach you, say that you got a job offer and it was like an innovative startup, and they're like, hey, we don't want to give you a 50 grand or 40 grand salary. Let's give you 1 Bitcoin a year. You're saying, yeah?
Yes. I would have done what Odell Beckham did, essentially.
Took his salary and
made it into Bitcoin. Because guess what? It's going to be equal.
When do you get that Bitcoin, or you just get pieces of it throughout the year?
No, I think they'll have to give you that. They'll have to give you
They'll just give it to you up front?
They give you just like
digital wallet. Yeah.
If you sign if you sign a $5 million contract, but they give you $1 million each year, they're giving you $1 million worth of Bitcoin each year. But here's the thing: they give it to you at whatever it's worth at the time they give it to you. So what's dope is if they give it to you when it's at 36, and then it goes up, you made money without having to do shit. Just like a stock portfolio, just like an investment account. Is that wrong? Is that not sound right?
No.
Right. So as a result of that, the volatility aspect is where people get twisted. Because the volatilities, it's so new, people truly don't know what the fuck to do with it. It's how Michael Saylor talked about a supersonic fucking bang going off when we broke the speed of sound. The reason why the supersonic noise from breaking the speed of sound happens is because the object is moving. It's moving faster than people can keep. Than the wind can keep up with it. So it breaks through and creates a bunch of turbulence, a bunch of noise, a bunch of sound. And I think that's what crypto is doing, especially for a bunch of these old heads who can't imagine the US dollar existing, how they already imagine it in their bank accounts as a non-tangible valuable asset. So if someone were to approach me and they were to ask me, what would you rather have your money in? Gun to my head right now, I would say crypto. But I wouldn't.
So if you had all your money in crypto right now, what would you how would you function?
I would have to constantly, which I know people who do this, I would have to constantly transfer it into US dollar.
Right now, that's how you have to use it.
That's how you'd have to use it.
You think it's going to get to it?
Unless I was in El Salvador, I was in certain countries that you can literally buy cars with Bitcoin.
Damn, bro.
Yeah, you can buy a whole car with Bitcoin. Yeah.
It's lit out there.